Hey everyone, welcome back to another live stream. We've got Andy Schectman behind stage here. Before we begin, I'm going to start things off with a very high stake clip. Hope you enjoy. Thanks for tuning in.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, liftoff.
We're spending $100,000 every second for stupidity, $1 trillion every 100 days for stupidity. So you just shift your focus from stupidity to gold and bang, you just buy whatever anyone wants to sell.
Gold is already hitting record highs with a strong dollar and with high interest rates. We can imagine what's going to happen when the Fed does flip back to easing.
Great point.
So, for example, we had the yen carry trade hiccup in the markets a few weeks back. Bitcoin had a really bad 24 hours before that event. But as one of the only sources of liquidity on a Sunday night, it was sold because it could be. So on the one hand, it kind of served its purpose as a safe haven asset.
What happens to the stock market and the economy and the cryptocurrency market when all of these whales sell? Bang, gone. And the market just goes whoosh.
By selling their treasuries, the yields go up, the U.S. solvency, because of all of the debt, is in serious question. The only way out would be to print money. And in an extreme way, you'd land that all on the Fed's balance sheet. That is why, rates going up, but gold going up, that's not normal. That is emerging market behavior. That is a market saying, we don't believe in the deficits. We are scared. We don't believe it.
Everybody can now hold gold as a reserve currency, and they can hold it in bar and coin format, the type of stuff that Andy's business sells. You can even use it as money in the way that Glint Pay allows you to do.
Hey everyone, if you're enjoying the content and find value in what I'm sharing, I'd greatly appreciate it if you like this video and subscribe to the channel. Your support not only helps this channel grow, but ensures that you stay up to date on the latest and greatest content. Thanks for tuning in today and for spreading the word. Love you mucho. All right, welcome back. Andy Schectman, how you doing today, sir?
Good to see you, brother. Ray, good to see you. Thanks for having me, man.
Absolutely. Well, before we begin, let me give you a brief and proper introduction. You are, for those who aren't familiar with who you are not only a man, the myth, the legend, but the president, the CEO, and owner of Miles Franklin, the world's leading precious metal and global investing firm established way back in 1989. Under your leadership, Miles Franklin has maintained an A+ BBB rating and is one of fewer than, I believe, 30 U.S. Mint authorized resellers. Also, I've had the privilege of supporting you and the CEO of Glint Pay, Jason Cousins, with the podcast, the YouTube podcast, The Resilient Compass. So I just want to say this is a very much anticipated production for me, and it's great to have you on today, sir. How is your week been?
Oh, yeah, it's all good, man. And like I told you in the short time I've known you, I'm a big fan of the way you do things and the questions you ask and your understanding. And it's my honor to be here, buddy. But life is getting crazy. It's speeding up, accelerating. My dad always talks about, as you get older, life's kind of like a roll of toilet paper. You don't notice it spinning when you're young, and it starts to spin faster as you get older. I don't know that I'm getting to that stage of things, but when I look at just the last 3 or 4 years, it's kind of like a roll of toilet paper. It seems to be spinning faster and faster and faster. And if I think the cardboard, in my dad's retrospect, he's talking about the cardboard in terms of life, but I'm looking at it as the election. And there's so much happening leading up to the big BRICS meeting in October, the election in November, and all the craziness that we've had leading up to this, and just wondering, what are the chances, man, of it being smooth sailing between here and, November. I have a very hard time in my gut and in my heart believing that it will be. I hope it is. I guess we'll find out real soon, man, but it is good to be here. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll see what the election brings. Hopefully, instead of cardboard, hopefully some wet wipes. And
yeah, right, for sure.
Anyways, hey, before we talk a little bit more about politics and dive into the nitty and gritty on your industry, I want to touch base on Miles Franklin. Give a little bit, put Miles Franklin, your company, your business, in the spotlight. As mentioned, that you had started this venture with your pops in 1989. I don't want to make you feel. I don't want to make you feel old, sir, but I was born just 2 years before that. So this is a quite some time that you've been in the captain's seat of a leading precious metal firm. Such as Miles Franklin. Do you mind giving a little quick pitch on Miles Franklin, and then also dive into your experience working with your pops over the time that you did? Because I relate to you. Well, a little bit about me, real quick, Andy's. I before coming and doing what I'm doing here, making this content, before working at Link 2, I used to work in the insurance industry for 10 years, and I worked alongside my father for 10 years, and I loved it, man. People always thought, are you crazy to be working with your dad? Maybe they knew my dad as well as I did. He's a very lively guy and animated, so he doesn't hold anything back and tells it like it is. It's a straight shooter, which I appreciate. Anyway,
I prefer those kind of people myself, man.
Absolutely. And but where I'm getting at is I had the privilege of working alongside him, just like you. And for the other spectrum, I have an adopted sister, and she doesn't even know her parents. So I always, have that as a something to think about and contrast against, and really makes me, appreciate the relationship that I had with my father. And I'm sure you did as well. Do you mind talking about Miles Franklin?
Sure, for sure. People tell me all the time, people who've lost their father or mother, how lucky I am and to embrace it. And I still have my dad. I was 19 when we started the company, and on a wing and a prayer in a one-room office the size of a closet. My dad's middle name is Miles. His best friend who lent us $60,000, his middle name was Franklin. And it's a situation where, we're the least likely cast of characters to have achieved what we did. We're the embodiment of the American dream. Not many years before we started Miles Franklin, my parents were told to file bankruptcy. A series of events led to fortuitous events led us to being able to start this company. But my parents sold their life insurance policies, and my dad borrowed $60,000 from his best friend, whose middle name was Franklin, to start the company in a tiny little office before the internet. And he said to me, look, there'll be one rule and only one rule, or I'll fire you if you don't abide by it. All right, cool, Dad. What's that? What's your one rule? He says, well, you'll buy something every 2 weeks. Yeah, I won't let you make the same mistakes I made as a younger man. All right, I can deal with that. Well, I've owned the company outright for 2 decades, at least. And he's been retired for that long. And I haven't really worried about him firing me any longer, but I have honored my promise to him. It's the best gift he ever gave me, ever. And it shaped the way that I look at precious metals, in that the gift was to understand the power of compounding. The gift was to understand the importance of paying yourself first, of having discussion with yourself down the road. If you get on a FaceTime call with yourself when you're 60 years old, and he's like, hey, man, listen, don't forget about me and us. There's a future ahead of you, and you need to prepare for it. Because like that roll of toilet paper, it starts to spin faster and faster and faster. It's like anything. I'll start working out after Labor Day. Why not today? I'll start dieting, after Thanksgiving. Well, why not today? The point of it is that if you want to do anything, the power of compounding, the power of being regimented, is important. And I learned that lesson, and it is the best gift he's ever given me. And I haven't missed a 2-week period in going on 35 years. And so when I look at gold and silver, to me, they're not an investment, they're wealth. They're wealth that I really have no intentions of ever using. I mean, there may be a hell of an opportunity that presents itself when the dust settles, where I could use my dry powder in the form of gold and silver to take advantage of that. Or God forbid, there's an emergency where I need it. But short of that, I know that I can leave it for my kids and my grandkids. And in the year 3000, long after the bills that we call money that are in our wallets are hanging from a frame in the Smithsonian as an example of what used to be, gold will have immutable wealth. And that to me is how I've always looked at gold and silver. I never, ever talked about selling or buying or holding gold and silver because the sky was falling. To me, it was wealth. And that's how I learned about it. And that's the way that I think about it. Now, Granted, in a world that we live in that is almost bizarro world right now in so many respects, I think you can look to gold and silver for its preservation qualities, its insurance qualities, the values that have been embedded in gold and silver, for going on 6,000 years. And so, namely, no counterparty liability. And in a world of counterparty risk, of weaponization of assets, of loss of privacy, of digitization of everything, tokenization of everything, having something outside the system to me is vitally important. And building a company. I went to the University of Minnesota. I wanted to play baseball. I hurt myself. That never worked out. I never graduated college, and here we are on a wing and a prayer. Two guys unlikely to do anything in a one-room office. We've eclipsed 10 billion in sales without a customer complaint. I am the American dream, and I thank God every day for being born in this country. I'm a patriot, but the things that I see around me horrify me, and I think should horrify everyone if your eyes are open. And when you put it together with the things that we're doing outside our borders, the mismanagement of the world reserve currency, the weaponization of the treasury market, the executive orders leading us to a green environment, and the ramifications that has on the petrodollar status, and so many things, when put together, become far more substantial than each and one of these developments in and of themselves. You put it all together, and there are some big changes on the horizon. I would say we are at the foothills of crossing a once-in-a-generation Rubicon that won't be as friendly for America as it once was. And that's kind of been my driving force over the last several years.
Absolutely, Andy. There's a significant amount of turbulence in the market. There is growing trends similar to what Jack Mahler, who was quoted in the intro, where we're seeing, as you mentioned, you're seeing inflation rates and the price of gold increase simultaneously, trending towards or underscoring new and emerging behaviors of the market. What do you think is obviously there's the BRICS nations that are organizing. There is inflation that's being printed. $100,000 every second, trillion every 30 days or 100 days.
Every 100 days.
Regardless, we'll probably be at 30 days soon at the rate that we're going. But to that point, what do you think is? What do you think we should be doing right now with all this going on in the marketplace? I'm not trying.
If you're not a contrarian, brother, you're going to end up being a victim. That's the bottom line. And people don't understand how big these numbers are. That's first and foremost, man. And, most people, if they work long enough, will make $1 million, maybe a lot more. Saving, it's a different thing. But, you work, from the time you're 17 years old till, you're retiring, you'll make over $1 million in your lifetime. What you have to show for it's a different thing, but so million isn't as big of a deal anymore. And there's thousands of billionaires in the United States, a few thousand anyway. So it can't be that big, right? A trillion can't be that big, but a trillion seconds ago was 31,688 years ago. So when you talk about doing 100,000 a second, imagine doing that for 31,688 years without stopping. That's how long a trillion seconds ago was. 31,688 years ago. These numbers are exponentially bigger than most people think possible. And when you talk about the reasons to own gold, I mean, certainly that's one of them. When you talk about what backs the dollar anymore, it's the full faith and credit of the U.S. government, right? Well, let's talk about the credit part. We are 35 trillion in debt on balance sheet, but that excludes Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, and government military pensions. Social Security is 77 trillion in the red. Medicare Part B, 99 trillion. Part D, the prescriptions, 22 trillion. And then add in the entitlements and pensions. And, we're 160, 170 trillion off balance sheet. We're 200 trillion plus underfunded. And if you look at the U.S. government, not the country of the United States, but the government, their asset base is only $5 trillion, of which 40+% is student debt, the largest asset of the United States. The land of the free, the home of the brave. Largest asset is student debt, as pathetic as that may be. They changed the laws years ago that even if you go bankrupt, they'll take your Social Security. You can't get out of student debt. And that's why when Biden talks about giving away $1 billion here or $1 billion there, which is illegal, mind you, it's just nothing, because it's so pittance compared to the 1.6 trillion. of debt on our children's back that we consider to be the biggest asset. So we're broke. We're at 123% of debt to GDP. And most of my career, anytime you cross over 100% debt to GDP, you're a banana republic. But as long as you have fair elections and a fair judicial system, well, you're not, right?
Mm-hmm.
Wait a second, maybe we don't have that. At least that's the perception of a good portion of the world. They're saying, well, are their elections fair? Is the judicial system two-tiered? How about the immigration system? How about the lawlessness in the cities? And the woke agenda where you are validated and valued by your lifestyle rather than by your merit, your grades. Are you on time? Do you get along with people? Do you come to work a mess? I mean, all of the things that if you were an employer would be important to you, screw it. How do you identify?
Mm-hmm.
I left Minnesota largely because of Governor Walz and his policies. This left woke agenda has done more to destroy our country in the last 4 years than any external foe could have ever done. And again, I grew up, my parents were hippies. I mean, I was a jock. My parents were hippies. I understand different lifestyles and respect them all. Had friends from all different walks and lifestyles growing up in the 70s, all different. Didn't bother me what drugs you did or how you identified yourself. I'm just, don't impose upon me. I could care less. You're still my buddy.
Yeah.
Well, that's one thing. But the way that it's all been shoved down our throats, from cancel culture to censorship to all of the woke agendas to everything. This stuff is not lost on the rest of the world. People have always admired this country in a very large way. And when you look at how things are upside down in this country, our culture is being whitewashed. It's not lost on the rest of the world. Now you add that to a country that is massively in debt, that is accelerating its fiscal irresponsibility and debt accumulation, to a country that is also weaponizing the treasury market, where Janet Yellen can say to CNN, look, we're okay with Xi and Putin being buddies because they're in BRICS together. And my initial thought is, well, that's mighty nice of you, Madam Secretary. Mm-hmm. But if Xi gives one penny to the Putin war machine, we will sanction their banks, their companies in Beijing itself. The West is sanctioning 60% of the world's underdeveloped countries, 60% in some capacity. So it's okay for us to give $260 billion to the Ukraine with no congressional oversight, Stinger missiles, F-16 jets, and the intelligence on where to use it all, and training Ukrainian pilots in the Arizona desert. That's all cool. But if you give any money, Xi, to Putin, well, we're going to sanction you. See, that is not going over very well within the rest of the world. This double standard, this hypocrisy. And so it's because of that I think you are seeing this incredible pushback and this drive to accumulate assets outside the dollar. And gold is a prime example. And if we look at the 10-year treasury and compare it to gold, over the last 25 years, gold has doubled the performance of the 10-year treasury. And it does it without counterparty risk. It can't be sanctioned, can't be confiscated if it's held within their own borders. And so you have an asset that is appreciated by 9.9% per year for 25 years on average, outpacing every traditional investment, including the S&P 500, even with dividends reinvested. It's the tortoise, not the hare. But what it offers is an asset that is not simultaneously someone else's liability. And I think the world looks at the United States in many respects very differently than it once did. A country that is going broke, that has tremendous fiscal and monetary irresponsibility, a country that is very coercive in the way that they do things with sanctions, that has weaponized the treasury market, that signed an executive order to go green, and has let the interior of their country go to hell. Yeah. And turn upside down. There's a theory called the Cloward-Piven theory, Cloward-Piven. People should check it out, read it, and you'll walk away and say, my God, that's what they're doing. It's a husband and wife professor that taught this class on more or less overthrowing capitalism and turning the United States into a socialist country with universal basic income. And they taught it at Columbia University. Coincidentally, our lead economic advisor, Jared Bernstein, whose main thesis is to lose the reserve status, well, he went there, as did Obama, Bill Barr, Madeleine Albright, the current Eric Holder, the current chief of staff, what's his name? Can't think of his name. The guy speaks all over the place. He went there. He'll come to me in a minute. But anyways, the bottom line is you got all of these leaders, these pundits, these Western leaders went to Colombia. Is it a coincidence that this class was taught there? This whole theory of overwhelming the inner cities, overwhelming the entitlement system, creating a serfdom of people who will never vote for anything but the party that gives out, hands out freebies. 20 million people in this country illegally. They're not going to vote for someone who wants to deport them and cancel their handouts. But these are things that are very concerning and very frightening, and is not lost on the rest of the world. So when we talk about gold is replacing in many respects the treasury market. Gold is, I believe, becoming more valuable than the currencies that purchase it. So I don't think we've seen anything yet. I really, truly don't. And the BRICS is just one example of a growing union of countries that is looking to gold very differently than they ever did.
Man, Andy, there is so much, or so many ways that we can take this conversation, from the BRICS, from you stating from Project Sandman to the revaluation of gold. What I wanted to talk about as well was, and also, we'll come back to these topics that I just mentioned, but even behind you, you have some precious metals hanging behind you, as well as some prized possessions of yours. You mentioned a moment ago about gold not being confiscated, but can we talk about Executive Order 6102 and the impact that had on the trajectory of the gold market, and how that could relate even to current trends or times today? I'll be playing a clip here shortly of you on stage at XRP Las Vegas, but I even participated in an exercise with the potential buyback valuations of XRP to define a potential floor in the event, a floor value for XRP in the event if we experienced an exercise where the government were to confiscate our XRP. So it was something that warmed me up, or introduced me to what has happened historically. And I'd like for you to talk about that. Why do you have this hanging behind you? Why is this mean so much to you? Floor is yours, sir.
Well, I've been doing this for almost 35 years, and most of my career, no one bought anything but pre-33 gold. With gold at $300 an ounce and a gold eagle at $350 an ounce, or $340, and a $20 gold piece like that hanging over my shoulder at $370. It's still 8 or 9% more, but when you're talking $30, no one ever bought gold bullion. They only bought the pre-33 stuff. And we made all of these designs, these placards, if you will, these pictures. And that does depict President Roosevelt's first act in office of confiscating gold. And the bills that surround the gold coin were gold certificates. And the difference between a gold certificate and a dollar or a dollar bill of the same denomination is the fact that the new bills that we use say "In God We Trust," those say "payable to the bearer on demand" in gold coin. And while I don't think confiscation will happen traditionally again this way, in 33, everyone owned gold. It was currency. It was in their pocket. Now, gold ownership is less than 0.5% across the entire financial matrix, from Joe and Jane Sixpack to the Harvard Endowment Fund. But the one thing that you would take away from that in terms of gold revaluation is that is exactly what Roosevelt did. He confiscated gold. Of course, patriotism was much stronger then, and it was a different time. But 67 cents was a lot of money back then compared to what it is now. It was probably, I don't know, a lot more in terms of purchasing power. When you buy a dozen eggs or a loaf of bread for a nickel, 67 cents was a lot of money. And so he paid everyone $20.67. Good deal. Give me your $20 gold coin. I'll give you $20.67. And then his next thing that he did was to devalue the dollar by 40% and made gold $35 an ounce. So in essence, gold was revalued by 40% overnight. And that is something that is not a stretch. In terms of confiscation, I don't think it will happen. Instead, you have JP Morgan as an example as the prime custodian of SLV along with BlackRock. And, this is a company that paid a $920 million fine to the Justice Department, the largest fine they ever handed out for manipulating the metals market. Yet they're still allowed to be the custodian of the world's largest silver trust and partial custodian of GLD, the fourth or fifth largest stockpile of gold in the world. They could confiscate those two funds, SLV and GLD, be sitting on all the gold and silver they would ever need without going door to door to people's houses like mine who belong to the NRA and lack patriotism the way they once did. And it would not behoove them to enact Venezuelan-style nationalization of assets when they could just take it all held in a central location with a pink bow wrapped around it, held by the banks that manipulate the metal to begin with. When they paid that $960 million fine, their head trader, a guy I know, Michael Nowak, is in prison still, and yet they're still allowed to be the custodian. They were fined $920 million that year. 2 years ago, their trading desk, their metals desk, made $1 billion. They walk away $80 million up in the black, throw a couple of their traders in jail for a few years, probably made them a sweet deal when they get out, and nothing changes. And so when we talk about what it means to me, what it means to me is, I don't know, it makes me think of my career where, forever, I never focused on the confiscation when people would buy gold, $20 gold pieces as an example. For me, it was that they offered better upside potential and they were a piece of Americana. And in 2008, when Obama was about to take office, the premiums on all of these $20 and $10 gold pieces went parabolic. I guess people thought he was going to call in gold. I don't know, but they were trading at massive, massive, massive premiums. I flew all around the country for a year and a half and switched everyone back into gold bullion because they were able to walk away with between 60 and 90% more gold, which was something I'd never seen before. And but it's really something. We made those pictures and had great success with it. Stopped making them a while ago, but something that makes me stop and think, and something that I think could happen again. When you talk about gold revaluation, the head of the Dutch National Bank keeps talking about it and keeps saying that, we should revalue the gold in the gold revaluation account. In fact, all the central banks hold gold on their balance sheet in an account called the gold revaluation account. Can't make that one up. And Senator Cynthia Loomis from Wyoming at the Bitcoin meeting conference in Tennessee a few weeks ago, after Trump said we should, if I'm elected, I'll make a Bitcoin strategic reserve account. She got up and said, yeah, well, I just, drafted a bill to fund that partially by revaluing the gold held by the Federal Reserve on behalf of the Treasury. And Janet Yellen would not need to do anything more than to tell Jerome Powell, do it. She wouldn't even need congressional approval. And every $4,000 increase in the price of gold based upon the 8,330 metric tons, which, mind you, hadn't been audited since 53, would add $1 trillion free and clear into the Treasury General account. And, we live in a world where people think, no, not even a second thought of Bitcoin being $1 million, right? Well, why couldn't gold be 120,000? If they revalued it to 120,000 and said to the world, any country that would like to deliver their gold to the U.S. Treasury, we will pay 120,000 an ounce. That is the price. And at 120,000 an ounce offset against your liabilities, your assets now offset your liabilities. You no longer are insolvent. You are no longer 123% debt to GDP. Mm-hmm. It's something that it's shocking to even think this way. It would create inflation. But when you realize you can massively inflate the debt away, you can default. I've been talking for 3 years about finding a villain, signing an executive order to go green, using the lead economic advisor of the U.S. government, Jared Bernstein, who advocates for losing the reserve status. It's his thesis. He's written reports called Dethrone King Dollar, who advocate where this is advocated for. Weaponize the dollar, inflate the crap out of it, and let the country lose its mind with borders and elections and lawlessness and wokeness and all of this crap where, you look at the Olympics and you got a guy beating the crap out of all the women boxers just because he identifies as a girl. Now, again, I I don't care your lifestyle, but right is right and wrong is wrong. And, you know, Governor Walz from Minnesota, $18 billion surplus in the state, put mandatory tampon dispensers in every boy's bathroom in every public high school and middle school in Minnesota, because if there is one girl who identifies as a boy who has her period, she should not feel ostracized while in the boys' bathroom. These are things that just boggle the mind. And again, I'm all for different lifestyles and respecting them, but throwing it in the face of the taxpayer this way, the reckless irresponsibility of doing that for 0.1% and making the taxpayer bear the burden of all of that is just emblematic of what these administrations are doing to what should be a massive privilege of being the world reserve currency. We're trashing it.
Yeah.
And these are the reasons that you look to gold and silver, not to get wealthy, but because it is wealth. And here we are 6,000 years later after it's mentioned hundreds of times in the Bible. And guess what? The most well-informed traders in the world are buying it at a level the world has never, ever seen before, that being the central bank. So yeah, I think it's just getting started, man. I truly do.
Well, something that I believe you've, by supporting you on the Resilient Compass podcast, another thing that you mentioned you've never seen before was the introduction of Article 1, Section 10, Clause 1, where the coining of money by states are accepting gold and silver as currency. Do you think this could be, as this gets rolled out, I believe already there's 22 states that have leaned into this and are already adopting it. Do you think this is going to be something that empowers the movement, which would trigger that or give the wind in the sails of a gold revaluation?
I mean, what it really speaks to me is of the American spirit. You know, it's the resistance, if you will, the rebellion. Because, you know, you have state legislatures that are allowing their constituents a fighting chance to get out of the way of this irresponsible monetary and fiscal policy. And so it's something I never thought I would see. It certainly is very, very encouraging, largely due to the work of Jason and others who are trying to open up people's eyes and minds to sound money. So yeah, I think it certainly will add a lot, because one of the interesting things about this recent gold rally that we have seen is that it's been completely void of the American public. Yet there's still the hard asset people, and our business is very strong. But when you look at, for example, the ETF inflows and outflows, for the better part of a year, the ETF outflows have been at a 45-degree angle, which means to a degree, you could have the real sophisticated gold buyers, the big funds that are drawing gold out of the ETFs. Only the really, really big players can do that. That's a small portion of it. What it really represents is the American public shifting their focus to things like NVIDIA and Bitcoin and Apple and pulling out of gold. So we've seen a strong dollar. We've seen a positive real yield, if you believe the nonsense coming out of the BLS. I mean, we should just take the L out of the BLS, where they can, revise 818,000 jobs, which is a 30% miss. Sorry, we miss it by only 30%, but if it were 3%, fine. 30%, now that's a little bit stupid, too stupid to be stupid. Or they can pull coffee out of the CPI in April because it's up 80% year over year and replace it with something like tea, or replace steak with hamburger because steak is too expensive. They keep changing it. John Williams of Shadow Stats will tell you we have 11% inflation. Add 8% to the bottom line number, and that's what you have. However, let's just pretend the 3% number is right, and the 5% that you get on a 6-month treasury is a positive real yield. So you get a positive real yield, a strong dollar, and ETF outflows from the West, and gold keeps going higher, up 20% this year, outpacing the tech industry, and for the past 25, outpaced every traditional asset there is. The only one that's beaten it is Bitcoin, which started from zero. And let's take that out of the equation for now, because we'll see where the race ends. But this is the tortoise, not the hare, and the tortoise wins the race. And it's done so methodically, quietly, without any fanfare, without any attention, and with hardly any American public participation, and yet it keeps on going higher. So yeah, I think that that's something that should be understood here, is that the rest of the world, and the central banks in particular are slowly and methodically letting their feelings be known through their actions, and not fast enough to jack the price up so much that it gains attention. But if you would have told me we'd have $2,500 gold and literally no one knows that gold's at all-time highs, I'd say there's not a chance in hell that happens. If you would have told me that the states will start allowing gold coins like these American Eagles right here to be legal tender for all debts, public and private, including paying your property taxes, I'd say there's not a chance in hell that they will allow that. But
Here we
look
are.
at all the things that we could say that about. If I would have told you in 2019, hey, Ray, I'll bet you $1 million that in 6 months you're going to be locked down and everyone's going to be wearing masks and you'll be forced to take a vaccine. All of these things, you'll say, there's not a chance in hell that's going to happen. And I've learned that, to expect the unexpected lately, which is something that, again, well, let's look at it in reverse. I would say there's not a chance in hell that it's going to be smooth sailing between here and November. I hope I'm wrong this time again, because I think there will be something that will trigger and wake people up. Look at the commercial real estate industry. The third largest building in St. Louis, the former One AT&T Center, just sold for $3.7 million. It's a 44-story tall building. It was sold for $206 million in 2005. So, how are the banks absorbing this? What's the ramifications of this? The inner cities, all of the urban doom loop, as it's called, as all the shops and restaurants sprung up around these big buildings, like in St. Louis, and then that just sells for 3.7, meaning it's vacant and empty. No one's in there, and the city's lawlessness and crazy. So the shopkeepers leave, the big businesses leave, which makes the people there leave because the quality of life and the services start to decrease, which then just reinforces more companies to leave and more people to leave and more. It's a reinforcing doom loop. How much of that?
And then on top of that, the building owner has to pay potentially exorbitant taxes on the capital gains.
And what do those taxes go for? What are those taxes used for? Those taxes are used for services within the city, and those services then start to denigrate because they don't have. So what do we do now? We raise taxes on the rich. And that's one of the things that, one of the things that we see when we are looking at, look at what Kamala wants to do. If she's in, she already said, you make over $1 million a year, your capital gains goes to 44%. Well, if you're making over $1 million a year and she's going to raise cap gains from 20 to 44, you think you're going to sell between November and January? Yeah, everything that you can. And how about if you have over 100 million? Now you have unrealized gains. Well, think about the big corporate owners. You think they're going to sell? Yeah, because if you're a Jeff Bezos with $5 billion in unrealized gains, where are you going to come up with that? You're just going to come up with it and keep your stock? Probably not. I think you would probably sell it and get out before you get taxed 25% on unrealized gains. It'd blow up think about the Bitcoin whales. The Bitcoin whales, are they not going to sell? I don't know. I would certainly think they would.
If they haven't already.
Yeah, well, and that's the point. So, there's so many things that are up in the air leading up to the election. I just think it's time for people to think differently. Think as a contrarian. Unconventional times call for unconventional thought, unconventional action, and it's time to take accountability for yourself. Stop relying upon a financial advisor to tell you what the world is, because most of them, not all of them, but a lot of them learn more and more about less and less till they know everything about nothing. Ask your financial advisor if he knows about the Belt Road Initiative, if he knows about BRICS, if he understands about what makes the dollar the world reserve currency? What are the ramifications of losing the petrodollar status? All of these things that I've talked about in 3,000 YouTube videos over the last several years, most of them won't know anything about it. And these are things that are going to have a material effect on this country. And at the end of any massive macro trend, the recency and normalcy bias is as thick as a blanket. It's hard to get rid of it. A lot of people won't be able to see past it. No, man, we always live. Everything's always going to be okay, dude. Stop worrying. we're supposed to live better than our parents and our grandparents. And I would say this generation right now might be the first in my life where living better than your parents probably is not going to be as easy as it once was. And, the opportunities, the cost, I send my kid to the University of Michigan. I did. It was nearly $70,000 a year to go to the Ross School of Business, one of the best business schools in the world. He told me 10th grade high school in Minnesota was tougher than the Ross School of Business. And that's what I was paying 70 grand a year for. I mean, is anything worth 70 grand a year like that? I mean, so these are the kinds of things that, getting ahead. It's not as easy as it once was.
You didn't send your child to a state school or a junior college like my dad?
No, if I were smart, I would have. 2 years at a junior college, you get really good grades, prove you can do it. You can write your ticket and get into any school in the country, including Harvard, if you really wanted to. Yeah. But no, I didn't. The Ross School of Business is a very prestigious school, and he got in. They only take like 500 kids a year, and he got in. And so I sent him there, and cool. He became a CPA, and now he works for Miles Franklin. Awesome. After being a CPA spreading his own wings, like working for your dad. You mentioned, I always said working for my dad was the best and the worst part about my job. I love my dad. He's my best buddy. My dad never sold an ounce of gold once in his career. Never, not once. I never saw it. Never. Yet people assume that my dad did all of this. And it's always in the back of my pit of my stomach. I mean, my dad started the company, and if he didn't, I wouldn't be here. I came on board 6 months after. But knowing what I've contributed to this company to make it what it is enough for me. I don't need to tell the public all about that, but I will say my dad never sold an ounce of gold. So I said to my son, listen, man, you're going to go to this school and you're going to find your own way. You're going to go live in Manhattan by yourself. You're going to become a man. You're going to spread your wings. You're going to pay bills. You're going to know what it's like to scrape a little bit. And I'm glad I did it. It was tough. I wanted to hire him right away, but in my back of my mind, I'm like, I don't want him to ever feel like he's daddy's boy. He's got to come and do things. And then when he comes here, when he did come here, you start from the very, very bottom. No special, nothing for you. You aren't getting my clients. You're not doing anything. Maybe the company will be yours someday, but in the meantime, you need to earn respect from everyone around you. That was a big deal for me, and that's where we are right now. But working with my father, I will tell you, it's best joy ever to work with my son.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
So it was cool to work with my dad. It's even better to work with my kid.
I relate significantly. You got to earn your stripes, and that's I 100% know exactly.
What do they say? Give someone fish, they starve. Teach them how to fish, they thrive.
Yep.
And that's more important. You need to understand how things work and how you earn respect and trust. You got to do it your own way, and then then you can have some freebies, but not until then. Not until you've earned it yourself. That's important to me.
Absolutely. Well, hey, I got a question up here from one of the audience members, which is something that I wanted to ask as well. It sets the stage. The question is for you, Andy. What does Andy think of XRP, and how can it help allow gold, silver to teleport around the world in seconds for next to no cost? Before you dive into this, answer real quick, and I know that we only have 10 minutes left of our call here, so I do want to play the one brief clip of you on stage at XRP Las Vegas, and then let's dive into this question, and then close out the conversation of why you're so giddy on Glint before you take off, if you don't mind.
You got it, brother.
Thank you. Let me play that clip right now. And thanks for the question, Bradford.
What really pushed me over the edge was a man that I find to be one of the smartest I've ever encountered. His name is Zoltan Pozsar. And Zoltan used to work at the New York Federal Reserve, and now I think he's at UBS. His explanation of where we are right now in history, he calls it Bretton Woods 3. Bretton Woods 1 is when we took over for the pound sterling at the end of World War II. Bretton Woods 2, I guess you could say loosely, is when we became the petrodollar. That's something that is debatable whether or not it has long legs left in it. But Bretton Woods 3 is a system that he said would be defined by transparency. To me, that's blockchain. That's perfect segue into XRP. And commodities. And pardon my French, okay? I'm sorry, but let's just be real. The US dollar shit the bed so bad that who's going to ever drink that Kool-Aid again, right? A marriage between blockchain technology and 5,000-year-old money, where the central banks of the world have bought more in the last 3 years than any time ever, should tell you we're on the same team. In order to make a new system that is widely adopted, you have transparency via blockchain and immutability via gold and silver, which have been money since the beginning of time. So it's not either or, you guys. It should be both, and it only makes your portfolio that much stronger.
So again, back to the question here, how does, and we can also switch out XRP with just technology, fintech, tech-enabled platforms. How do you believe technology, blockchain, distributed ledger technology, D for all the above, will help gold and silver to move around the world in seconds for next to no cost?
I think it's a given. It will happen. And a lot of the platforms, like I don't know if XRP and things like mBridge are compatible, but there is no question we are moving to that type of an environment. The current system is antiquated. It's costly. It takes a whole bunch of time. It lacks transparency. There's KYC and AML things that are ridiculous for countries who are switching between currencies. Look, my focus has been on things like mBridge particularly, but it allows for, it's a similar technology. I guess it's a bridge, if you will. It's a bridge system. XRP is a very, very interesting asset. It's something that I think people should own. I don't know enough about it to comment on it in terms of how do I think it will play out. I mean, look, they seem to be moving in the right direction. Their court cases are being settled, and they have a very impressive list of countries they've signed up with. But I do believe that we are moving into a system of a marriage, as I said there, between blockchain technology and assets. This is the only way things will ever work again. And
what I have on stage or on screen right now, Andy, is a screen grab from the mBridge or from BIS website about the mBridge. What I wanted to focus or have the audience focus on was they had recently updated the website as of this month, August 2024, and highlighted or referenced the observing members to the project mBridge, which includes numerous central banks, the IMF, the Fed. There's over, I want to say, 23 different entities, some of the largest financial institutions in the world. I do see that as a common denominator between those that and XRP, because some of those or Ripple, some of these entities have already explored partnerships with Ripple in the past. So I just, or even monetary. Yes, there's many similarities of the entities that have explored with partnerships with Ripple, and that's what I thought was interesting. Correlation between mBridge and potentially the XRPL. But regardless, though, thanks for leaning in on that question. On the topic of technology and tech-enabled platforms, I'd love to get your perspective with the last few minutes that we have together on Glint. Why do you believe Glint is going to empower the gold market, or at least individuals who hold their wealth in gold and want to leverage that and maybe use it to pay for a coffee at a local coffee shop or other daily transactions?
Well, really, that's. I mean, if I'm being honest, first of all, I was very impressed with the technology and Jason, the leadership. To me, I would feel more comfortable having cash in the form of a Glint account in a segregated account well, I guess it's allocated. It's segregated to Glint, but it's in a storage vault in BRICS, who I've had a 20-year relationship with all around the world in vaults. So we have our own BRICS storage program, and I know the integrity of the corporation. I mean, I've never ever had a problem with BRICS in all the years I've worked with them, and delivered over 250 million in gold and silver to different BRICS vaults. Than I would in a bank that is massively over leveraged and undercapitalized, with the ability, if I decide to use it for utility, spend it. And I was blown away by how fast it happened. I had lunch with Jason in London, and he paid for his Glint card, and bang, he had it on his phone. The minute the guy ran it, you could see the gold deducted off out of his storage account. It's very, very, very impressive.
Did you ever imagine a technology like that come into the market?
No, I mean, it's really great, and I think it's a very nice supplement or complement to physical gold holdings. You know, a lot of people, the most common comment I get is, I want my money out of the bank. And I think this is a way for people to have their money out of a bank, held at BRICS, and with the ability to access it if they need to. It's a very nice complement, if you will, to what we do. Physical gold in your possession. This is a way to access that and create utility and you know, leave your money physically held in a vault instead of in a bank. That I think is really where problems will be, especially when you realize the Dodd-Frank Act talks about bail-in legislation instead of bail-out legislation. I want to be as far away from the bank as possible.
Yeah, well, agreed. And for full transparency, I am a Glint user. I've been able to document and share my experiences using the MasterCard to purchase things such as a coffee, and had that great experience just like you had.
Pretty cool, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Andy, I know that you have is it a hard stop in a minute?
I got 1 minute. I'm on another one. And but I'd love to come back on, man. I honestly would. I like you a lot. From the moment I met you, the way that you conduct yourself, and I like your line of questioning here. And there's a lot more I'd like to get into, and I'm sure you have other things you wanted to ask me. Unfortunately, time flies because I talk so damn much. But my apologies for that. But look, let's do it again. Let's pick up where we left off. There's going to be so much stuff happening between now and November that I'd come on as often as you'll have me, and we'll ride shotgun and see what the world has to talk about, man.
Awesome. I appreciate that, Andy. Well, for those in the audience, to learn more about Andy and Miles Franklin's, be sure to go to milesfranklin.com to dive into their very competitive offerings, which I believe
and by the way, if you go to info@milesfranklin.com, send us an email. Say you heard about us on this podcast. Ask for our price list that we keep close to the vest. It's as good or better than anywhere in America. Or any questions that you heard on this, or anything else that you'd like to know, info@milesfranklin, and we will respond immediately. No obligation. Put your phone number down if you want to be called. I'm sorry I got to fly, brother, but I look forward to doing this with you again soon, Ray, and you, and I hope all of you out there stay well.
Hey, thank you, Andy. I appreciate you for tuning in, sir. I'll take you off stage here and close things out. You have a great rest of your day, and congrats on the success at Miles Franklin.
Thank you, brother. Look forward to chatting with you again soon.
All right, sir. Thank you. Bye-bye, sir. All righty, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you had a great time tuning into today's live stream. Next week, we're going to have Quincy Jones back with us to have a great discussion. Actually, the last time we connected or had Quincy Jones was a interview at the XRP Las Vegas Conference. So this is going to be a wonderful time to explore and get an update on what he's working on at the in regards to the XCC blockchain, and get some more alpha. But anyways, appreciate you all for tuning in today. I hope you thought today's content was impactful and engaging. If so, make sure you press the like and subscribe. It really helps me lift this channel off the ground. But with that being said, I hope you have a great rest of your day and week as we wind down this weekend. But thanks for tuning in. Love you mucho.